Cincinnati typewriters, and I'm going to show you the Royal KMM, what it can do and how to do it. Obviously this is not like other Royal KMMs. It's been painted. Not an easy typewriter to paint because the frame actually has to be painted one color while other certain panels have to be painted another color, and they've got to be all taken off and separated. One of the more difficult jobs. But on this one, the functionality is all the same. And we're going to start with these numbers here. You would think that 1 through 10 equals 1 inch, but it doesn't. It's, we start at the 0 and go to 10, and you can see here it is not 1 inch. Instead, it's just an arbitrary number. But those numbers, if it's been set up correctly, do match these numbers. We can move that over. You can see the 20. And those match these numbers down here, which this one's very old and it's been through a little bit. So we've got paint chipping off. I did not paint that part of it because of the numbers. And that actually, you can see these numbers when you look down inside there. I don't know if I can get it tight enough so that you can see it, but there you can see that. So if we go that to, I can't tell what number that is. That's actually 1.5, even though it's not listed up here. That's actually right there. And if we go down a little bit more, you'll see we'll go to 10 there. So right now, if we type something, it will be at this spot, which matches this spot, which matches this spot. So you just use those as general guides when you're loading your paper. And to load paper, we just slide this over. Generally, you would want that at the 0. Just put that right at 0 so that when you get to the 20, then that's where you are at the end. Generally, you'd want your margins to be either at 20 or 1.5 or even 10. Again, the numbers don't mean anything. I've checked, it's not millimeters either. It's just numbers. And we just put it in there and turn. Pull this out. And this can kind of, it just kind of rests. It pulls back. And if you have a problem where you're spacing your paper and you get something like that, I don't know if you can see that, but instead of the whole paper coming up, it's kind of forming a little spot there where the paper's kind of bunching up. If you have that problem, it's either because here or underneath here there are rollers that are getting flat spots and you need new rubber, you need to have them refurbished. It's not an easy thing. I send mine out. I don't even try to do it. I know some people will take them and shave the old rubber off and then use something like shrink wrap to rebuild those. I wouldn't do it on one of these larger ones. I can see doing it on some of the smaller models, the portable ones, but not on these. Send it out, have it done right. Also have this rubber replaced so that everything's pliable but still hard. Anyway, once you got your paper loaded, you we'll notice here, this is two things. Number one, it's a carriage return lever, but it also advances the paper. And right now, it's advancing 2 lines. Well, 3 lines, I take that back. And in order to make it advance only 1 or 2 lines, we use this right here. If I've got it all the way back, when I turn this, it advances 1 line. I'm going to switch this to black because I don't like printing in red. But you can see that's 1 line, and if I pull this all the way forward, then it advances. There are some cases where the line spacing doesn't measure out the way you want it to. So, for example, on this page, we've got lines on the paper already. And let's say I want to use this line to type on, but I can it's either too low or too high. You see, we can't get it between, but there's 2 ways we can do it. I can either push this button and turn it just a little bit, so that we can change it, or you can release this, and now I'm no longer constricted to the line spacing. But even with this released, I can still use the line spacing lever, and it can still advance however many lines I've got it set up for. See, we've still got 3 lines here. But generally, I would say don't leave this up while you're using the machine. Leave this flipped back. Otherwise, if you accidentally touch this, it's hard to get it back to where it was originally. So let's say I type something, I come down, type something again, and I decide I want to go back and make a correction. Well, if my line spacing isn't set, then I can't get exactly back up here so that I could say put a strike through and cross out letters. So generally, you want to keep this where it is, all the way back. You only pull it forward when you're trying to adjust. And of course, here we have the paper release lever on this side. That is, let's say the paper's not lined up right. You can pull this forward and that releases it, and you can kind of go back and forth to get it straight. Now we're going to talk about margins. Let's see. We'll use this piece of paper. We've got our paper set up, and I want the margin to be right here. So I'm going to put the cursor there, and then I'm going to use the magic margin lever right back here. And when I do that, you'll hear kind of a click. That's the margin sliding over to this point. So I did that. Now the margin did not move the way it was supposed to. Try that again. And here you can see what's happening when you press those levers. If you look behind this thing, this is what the margin setting is. So if I come down here and I pull the magic margin lever, you can see that move. See, that's what moves the margin. So you can manually, if your magic margin lever is not working properly, you can manually just squeeze that and move it to wherever you want it. And you can move it all the way down to where the cursor is now. Or you can move your cursor to where you want it and then put it there. Either way. But the magic margin lever, if I want to move the margin, I can pull the lever and then release the carriage and then move it wherever I want it, like that. That's why it's magic. And I got the same thing on the other side. So here's your margin setting. This is the magic margin on the other side, on the right side. So I move my cursor down to here because I don't want to type past there. And I just pull the magic margin and you'll see it, and you'll hear the bell as it aligns with the margin. Now I've got a margin here and here, which is here and here. And I can see here my paper's not quite straight, so I'm going to straighten it. Now my margins are set, but supposing I get to here and I've already typed in maybe 2 letters of a word, or 3 letters, or however many, and I want to finish the word, but I'm at the end of my margin. But you can see I've left myself a little bit of room. So the way to get around this is to press the margin release button right here. Let me zoom out here. So if I press the margin release button, then I can type in more letters. And then on the next page, or on the next line, my margin is still where it was. Now the other thing that happens up here is the tab. It's not, they used to have the tabs back here. You would put them in manually, and then they moved to this thing that you can see here, a number of little, you can see those little metal pieces. Those are actually for the tab settings. To set your tab, you would go over to your margin. Most people use the tab for paragraphs and say do 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they would set their tab with the tab set button, which is right here. There, now I've set the tab at 5 spaces. So I come back over, hit the tab button, it'll stop at 5 spaces. And then my next line, let's set this back to 1 single spacing. You see, that's my tab now. But there are other things you can do with the tabs. So, let's say I want to make a list, and I want, also if you want to clear the tab, you press the tab button to get to that tab point. And then hit the tab clear button, and that erases your tab. Now, it goes here because that was my second tab. I'm going to clear all the tabs out because I want to show you what else you can do with the tabs. So I'm going to start off my line with name. Then I'm going to space a little. Sorry about the shaking. And I'm going to hit tab set. And then I'm going to type city. And then I'm going to space a little. I'm going to hit tab set again and put age. Then I'm going to skip 2 lines and I'm going to put my name, Eric, hit my tab, whoops, hit my tab, put Cincinnati, hit tab again, 35. Then I'm going to go to my next line, Sam, tab, Cincinnati, 18. And now, as you can see, we've got this nice column where we've got these nice columns for your list. So that's the other purpose of the tabs that you would use. If you have forms or something, they come in handy. If you're filling out the same forms over and over again, as long as you use the paper guides and line up your first tabs, it'll work with that. Now, as for down here, the other buttons we have is a backspace. Does the same thing you would think on the computer. So we type, and then we realize, hey, I didn't mean to type that. Hit the backspace button, and you can use the slash key to cross that letter out, or an X if you want. See how. You see, as long as I've kept my line spacing lever back, then we can always come back to different parts. And if we get here, we can use the backspace button and always land right on the same letters. Of course, they've got the shift, which actually shifts the whole striker down, so that if you look at these strikers, each one has a different character on it. Most of them has a lowercase and uppercase. So if we hit shift, just like on a computer, it shifts this down and does an uppercase. And we can hold the shift lock, and we can do all uppercases. And to get the shift lock off, you just got to press the shift button. Pressing the shift lock button will not unlock it. You have to press the shift button. Now what you'll notice on these older typewriters, there's no one. Got too much glare in here for the be able to see the keys. There's no 1 and there's no exclamation point. For the 1, you just use L. Lowercase l is what the number 1 is. If I go to a new line, I'll type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if I want an exclamation point, there is a trick to make them, although writers used to not like exclamation points. They would say it's a lot like laughing at your own joke, and people looked down on it. But if you want to make an exclamation point, you're going to hit the space bar and hold it down, then hit the shift button and do the number 8 character, which is an apostrophe. Now I'm going to let go of my shift, and I'm going to do a period. And this is what that'll end up looking like, depending on what fonts you have on that typewriter. That's how to do an exclamation point on old typewriters. Now on this, we've got the 2 different color inks. As you've been seeing there with the red and black. To change the ink color, you're going to use this right here. That's red, that's black. Now, if you want to go all the way over, you'll have to press this in order to get over there. This actually is no ink at all. So you'll notice the ink ribbon is not coming up and doing anything. And the reason for that is the way it used to be is they would sell little pieces of paper that had more or less white out on them, white paint on them, and you would go back over your letter and you'd slip that down in there and then you'd hit it, and that would white out your whatever mistake you had made earlier. But generally you're not going to use that. You're going to use black or red. So we put that right in the middle to get black. Put it all the way over and you'll see the ribbon pops up a little bit further to get red. Over here we have the strike force, the striker force setting, and I guess it basically, it will hit the paper harder or lighter depending on what you have here. I don't think it's very relevant nowadays, but if you're typing a whole novel, or if you're doing a lot of typing, I can see how you would lower that to make it easier to type and keep from getting carpal tunnel syndrome. Or if you're doing like carbon paper where you have to hit through several pages, you would use that. But it usually, you can't feel a whole lot of difference by changing it. You could change it to one extreme, like set it on 0 and then try it, and then set it all the way to 9. And you might feel just a tiny bit of difference. It's really hard to tell. But I think if you were doing carbon paper, you would be able to tell a lot easier. Now inside there we've got ink, ribbons. I've got another video on how to change those ink ribbons, but you can see here that as the carriage moves, the ink ribbons turn. When you get to the end of a ribbon, it should automatically change direction. But let's say you get to the end of a ribbon and it doesn't, it gets stuck. This does happen every now and then with these older typewriters. The mechanics of it, no matter how well you oil them or adjust them, sometimes they just won't work perfectly every time. If you get that, what you'll have is you'll start seeing the letter get lighter and lighter and lighter, and then suddenly you don't have any letters. And so all you got to do is you look and you see, oh, I'm at the end of my ribbon, just switch the directions, and then now suddenly it will turn in the opposite direction. And that is all I've got for the Royal KMM. If you're considering buying one, keep it in mind, or if you need one fixed, get a hold of me. And no matter how old it is, I can usually get them, turn them around within a week.